Hey everyone, Livy here, back with another video, and today, today we are doing a tag that I have a feeling it's kind of going to get me very emotional, but today we are doing 10 forever cards. This is a VR to Nova Luna Tarot. And Noah basically tagged me, a bunch of others, to talk about our 10 favorite cards, right? These are your favorite depictions of any card from any deck. But yeah, it can only really be 10. So there could be a lot of repeats in this, and you will see. This was doing this tag, guys. This was so hard. I had so many cards from so many decks that I just like every time I think about that card, it just gives me feels. It does. So there were so many more I could have shown in this video, but I decided to just narrow it down. Okay. Yeah, I narrowed it down basically by if I looked at that card, did it make me feel a certain way? Was it a visceral reaction? And if it was, then, it was definitely one of my favorites. So there were a lot that kind of got me. But let's start with, I think the order I'm going to go with this is like, kind of like least emotional to most emotional. And I don't know why that's the vibe. Even though they're all like favorites, these are just like, they're somewhere in there. Okay. But anyways, let's start with this card. This is from the Teeny Tiny Tarot by Holly Audley. And this is the Three of Wands. And I don't know what it is about this card, as simple as it is. There's something about this card that is just one of my favorites. Like every time I think about the Three of Wands, I think of this card. And I think for me, one of the reasons is just how clearly it shows what this card is about. Like the journey aspect, that you're going to go off on an adventure and you don't know what, like you can see some things in the horizon, but you don't know where that journey will take you. And it is a balancing act. You have to hope that this mast keeps your boat going and that the two oars keep you on that path, It takes a lot of steering and direction, and you need to know, like, for that reason, I don't know, it's just one of my favorite Three of Wands, like, ever. Every time I see a deck, it has to kind of remind me of this, and if it doesn't, I don't think it totally depicts what this card is about accurately. So, for that reason, I guess this was one of my favorites, and yeah, I don't know, I always just think about it. And this one is just like, again, this is kind of silly. This is from the Northern Animal Tarot, 3rd edition. Not the linen one, unfortunately. I got this, this was the first of the 3rd editions. So it was on this, interesting cardstock where I think the creator said it's, waterproof, but I would have preferred linen. It's okay. But anyways, not important. This is what is. This Knight of Wands is by far, I've always talked about this, but this Knight of Wands is by far my favorite Knight of Wands. It just, I don't know why it gets me every time. It's just so weird why it does. But this Knight of Wands is my favorite because it just so perfectly encapsulates all the emotions and feelings I think this card gives about of go, 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 about being confident and knowing who you are. And and this Knight of Wands, the way that they're dressed and the mask and everything, it almost makes me feel of a superhero, being able to go boldly into danger and action and anything because that's what's necessary in some ways. I don't know. It hits. It hits for me. I don't know how to explain it. I think it's also because this mask and the vibes and stuff also reminds me of a story I wrote. And for that reason, I don't know, it just gives me that Knight of Wands energy. It's so good. And so this one always has to be one of my favorites. And kind of, okay. Ooh, this is getting quickly into emotional territory. I don't know. Okay. This is a high priestess. This is a high priestess from the Raven's Prophecy Tarot. And I am just always obsessed with this high priestess, not just because of like the colors and things in it, but I'm obsessed with it because there's just like a certain, this is like the mystery. When you think of the high priestess as this mystical figure that you can't really like puncture deep into understanding, but at the same time is supposed to depict like the the mystery and magic sometimes that it goes into tarot. I think of this card because this figure is holding up, you know, they're holding up a mirror, but what they see is not even their own reflection. It's like the sky, and there's this, but at the same time there's like space behind it. So there's this realm of like, there's so much knowledge and so much depth in this card, so many layers of things. Like there's no way to, I don't know, like I said, there's like no way of knowing how deep the mysteries of the high priestess goes. And I like that this depicts that, you know, is there's just so much scratching beneath the surface of like questions you can ask to tarot and not ask to tarot, and will you find your answer? You don't know. But it's, I don't know, it just has so many layers, and I really love this card. I always think about it so much. But then, okay, I feel like the cards that are coming now, like from here on out, these are the first 3 of the 10. These are like, I like them, but they're in like a weird emotional way, but it's not as deep as I feel like the rest of these cards are going to be. So preface, like warning here, like these are just like cards that like stick me so deeply. Okay. The first of this is kind of like, okay, this is a Tarot as a Divine. There are actually a couple of cards that I could have also put in this, but I think the reason why I chose the Star from this card as like one of my favorite forever cards of all time is that when I think of the Star, I do think a lot of this card, and just the Star, how to explain this? The Star is complicated because on the one hand, yeah, it's easy to talk about how the Star card is just hope. It's wanting like better things to come, right? After, because this comes after, it comes after the Tower. So, you know, there is that wanting the things, for things to be better. But the reason why I think I like the Star card is that there's just so much beauty in this. It's like the flowers behind it that are hopeful. It's her face looking up into the heavens, hoping that things will be better. For her poor, I think this was her brother that got transformed, but she was like so upset, and you can actually see, I don't know actually if this lighting is bad. She's like has a tear, I think, in her eye, and she's looking up, and you can tell she's been through some shit, but she's still hoping that some kind of miracle will happen. I don't know. It's like it hits it hits so deeply in some ways. It's like, because the Star, yes, it's hope, and people like, most of the time I think when people get this card, they think it's a good thing, and it is. But this shows that like kind of, I wouldn't say darker, but almost that like side where it's like not everything was great, you know, before this card came around. It's acknowledging that, but still persisting anyways, I guess, which is why I love this Star so much. And it just kind of gets me, I don't know, gets me so hard. Okay. This next one, I mean, this deck that I'm going to show, or this card from this deck that I'm going to show, had a lot of interesting cards too. Some that could have definitely been faves, maybe over this one. But this card is one of the reasons why I decided to get this deck, I guess, too. So that, I guess that kind of tells you everything you need to know. Okay. This is from the Dungeons and Dragons Tarot. And this is their 6 of Wisdom. So for those not familiar with this deck, they rename the suits so that they kind of align to D&D. The Six of Wisdom in particular is the Suit of Cups. And so this is the Six of Cups from that deck. And I think the reason why this is probably my most favorite out of all the cards from that deck, but also a forever card for me, is that this card shows so perfectly what I think of when I think of nostalgia. Is obviously, you can see here, this is a child, and the child is reading what you could only assume is one of their favorite books. And there's this whole like fairy tale fantasy going on in the background. Like they are reading this book and they're seeing these images so clearly in their head. It's an adventure. And they almost have like this serene almost expression on their face. Like this is what they live for. Like this is everything. But at the same moment, it's showing like, again, it's showing like they're still young. In this card, this person is still young. But at the same time, it's a reminder to the reader that maybe this was you once. And you need to go back to that joy of going into an adventure, into a story, into something, and feeling it so deeply. You know, this is definitely a reader's card of that nostalgia. And it gets me because I was this kid for sure. A lot of my childhood was spent reading, and specifically reading fantasy, like escaping into stories and just living them and feeling them so viscerally. I guess that's why this is one of my favorites, because it just shows that act, and also just reminds me of something I want to do kind of soon, and hopefully maybe into 2024. One of the things I kind of want to do is going back into old stories and that I still have and like rereading them. And this just reminds me so much of that. So this Six of Wisdom is everything. It makes me so emotional. I don't know. It makes me miss like certain moments of my childhood too. So, so good. Okay. Next. Sorry, I had a moment here. This next card should also surprise literally no one. I think even Nova, the one who tagged me, she kind of called it. It was going to be a card from this deck in here. I could have picked a couple of others too, but I knew in my hearts of hearts that this was my favorite. This is the Guided Hand Tarot. And there are so many great cards from this deck that make me... they're just catapulted into my favorite cards ever. Okay, this is one of my favorite decks. But this card is by far my most favorite from this deck. And this is the Hermit from the Guided Hand Tarot. This was another aspect of my childhood distilled so distinctly. You could actually say even both of these together, right? There was that side of me that was always reading as a kid. And then there was a side of me that was alone in the universe, or felt very alone in the universe, sitting in my room, listening to music. And that was my way to recharge, right? Because a hermit is all about hermiting yourself away, recharging and, needing to retreat and find the things that give you joy again, or just, stimulate you in that way. And this hermit is that. These were both my childhood, really. Is like, I was a very lonely kid, I guess, in some ways, but not in others. Like, I had people around me. It's just that I was also very introverted, and these were just the things like I did. This was me. Both of these are me. And so every time I see these, it's like I understand so deeply. And for those reasons, like this hermit, every time, like the galaxy, the colors, just the act of what the boy is doing. This is such a deep card for me. Could not talk about it, These next two, I'm going to show them both at once because they're from the same deck. But both of these also get me, and are favorites for sure. Just always, because I've shown one of these cards a lot. The other one, though, is just so good, and and needs to be talked about too. But these cards are both from the Monsoon Tarot. I have this is the regular or the standard edition. You guys will remember though my first I also have the mini Monsoon, and that was my first rendition of this. But anyways, my two favorite cards from the Monsoon Tarot have to be the Hermit from this one and the Wheel of Fortune. We'll talk about the Hermit first because, again, I already talked about like this Hermit. These are by far my two favorite versions of the Hermit card, right? This one with the music, but also this one because this is more what it feels like these days to be the Hermit. For me personally, is I sometimes, again, because I am so very introverted, the world could be literally burning down around me, but I will have to. And what I do is a lot of times is like sequester myself away, maybe in books and writing and other things. And I just hide away and try to rest and try to recoup my energy because I need to. I need to a lot. And this card is just, it's so good in showing that depiction of like, why? Why do you have to leave? Why do you need to remove yourself from the equation? And it's because everything sometimes just fucking sucks, right? It's like burning. And you need to actually take a break. Like, I don't think a lot of people, or maybe a lot of people do understand like the step to the Hermit is like, it's sometimes very, very necessary to remove yourself. And for me, these are the things I find I go to when I do that, but I don't know, it just shows it so deeply. Because I know a lot of times, the traditional image of the Hermit is, yeah, they have the lantern, but they're cutting their way through the snow and the darkness and trying to, I don't know, find better things, but you never see the why. And this is kind of the why. So this Hermit is so good and everything for me. But let's talk about this Wheel of Fortune too. This is by far one of my favorite Wheel of Fortunes. There's a couple of other I also like, and I almost put in here instead. But the reason why this wheel, I think, won out over all the others and one of my favorite cards ever is just that it shows the fates. The Wheel of Fortune is literally the hand of fate. And this, what I like about this version, of course, well, one, they're cute little cats. So yeah, I like cats. But I like how accurate it also is to mythology, right? There's the one that is blind holding the string. There's the one that cannot speak. And then there's the one that cannot hear. And that's also a part of it. So it shows that traditional myth of the, what are they? The Moray or something? The ones who hold the thread of fate, right? This is a very Greek mythology version of the wheel, right? But it's just so, every time I think of this card, I just get those feelings as like, yes, this is the hand of fate. This is what the wheel is about. There are ups and downs, and at any point in time, it can be snipped, right? You can have your life end, is more the most literal thing from mythology of this, but it could also just be the bumps in the road, the scrapes along, and it's just so good. I don't know, like, this is more what I want to see in the Wheel of Fortune. Sometimes people show the wheel and it's just so freaking boring. Like, they just do a literal wheel. And I'm like, okay, cool. But this is what you could be alluding to. The ups and the downs and the stretching out of your fate. And even here, look, you can see it too. Like, there's the different seasons and what goes around comes around and blooms. And it's just so good. I'm sorry. This is just, this is up there. Like, why aren't all the Wheel of Fortunes like so good like that, Anyways, let's move on. There's two more cards, okay? Two more cards for me to show. Out of this next deck that I'm going to show, there were a lot of cards in this deck that I could have picked over this one, but every single time I kept pausing and looking at this card again and going, yeah, I feel this very deeply. This is like personal, a personal like thing for me. And I think that's what's important. For a card to be your forever favorite, it has to give you that gut reaction, you know? You need to feel it deeply. So this next card, this is from the Practical Magic Tarot. This is the Chingue Labrador one. And my favorite card from this deck, but one of my forever favorites, I think, when I think of the Four of Swords, is this one. This says, just simply, stop thinking for a moment. But it's the way in which it's shown that kind of gets me. And I've talked about this card, I think, before, or I've shown it before. As you can see, right, you know, the four swords, normally, we all know it's the rest card. You need to recharge. It's kind of similar in some ways to the Hermit, like they echo each other. But this one almost talks about like literal sleep or like mind rest. And this shows it. Sometimes the reason why the Four Swords has to pop up, and maybe this is just because, again, I've talked about this on my channel before. This shouldn't be a surprise, but like maybe it's because I do have issues with depression. But this gets me because sometimes that Four Swords is me just wanting to blot out my own face and just not exist for a second. That's the rest I want. It's just to not exist. And I know that can be sad, but at the same time, this gets me. Like the feeling of just wanting to like disappear, not show my face, not be around. I need to rest. This is what this shows. This is how I feel. And I guess for that reason, this is as simple as it is so effective of just not wanting to be around. And it gets me every time. I guess this card gets me every time because it's like, wow, okay, thanks. Like it just calls me out. But it's so good, okay? It's so good. And finally, the last card. If you've been on my channel a while, I know I've talked about this card too, so this shouldn't really surprise anybody. But my last forever card, a card that every time I think about this card, I think about this. How do I explain? Every time I think about this specific rendition of this card, it is the card for me. This is the mini version of the Oak, Ash, and Thorn deck. And the card that I'm specifically talking about is their depiction of the Sun card. Okay? I've shown this before. It kind of goes in the vein of this, where this card kind of highlights for me a lot of my own struggles with, I guess, depression, but also that there can be still hope and the sun can still shine through even when the storm clouds are taking over your mind. I think this is why this is one of my favorites, because it shows not the stupid naked baby on the horse, okay? This shows like why we need the sun to come out, why it needs to be here, and persevering anyways, even when you have a heavy load. Or I don't know, the roses get me too, just because of my last name, but like, it's just, I don't know. This is definitely a card that's an analogy to my own depression also. But also, for those who don't know, the sun is actually one of my shadow cards. So when you think about like your birth cards, right? I have that combination where the Magician and the Wheel are my cards, but also this one, depending on my numbers, the way you do my numbers, this is either one of my birth cards also, or it is my shadow card, but I'm pretty sure this is my shadow card. I just have I kind of have a very cynical take on the sun a lot of times, but this card reminds me why I shouldn't always be so cynical of the sun, I guess. And I don't know, I just wish more decks showed how profoundly the sun needs to shine through, you know, not just like, oh, it's all happy and good times. And look at how happy and joyful I am. Like, I don't know. It doesn't always work for me, but this one does it every time. And every time I think of this card, I just get very emotional because I don't know, I just feel it's the gut punch, okay? So, yeah, these are my favorites. again, there are so many other cards that could have been in this place, but these just affect me so much. And I think that's what's I think that's what can be beautiful about tarot. And I'm kind of grateful that Nova also created this tag to talk about this, is that what makes you what can make you a better reader too is understanding the cards in a way that just relates to you and your experience and your feelings and everything. And I don't know, it's the power of tarot, I guess. But I think of I think people's favorites, can say a lot about them. And I think these say a lot about me and the experiences and the things that I've gone through, or the things I feel deeply in others. So, yeah, that's them. So without any further ado, I'm going to end this video. By the way, I'm kind of glad you guys can't see my face, because I've kind of got emotional in points where I thought I was almost gonna like cry for a second. That's so weird. But anyways, yeah, I'm gonna peace out now. So if you were watching, thank you for watching. And I hope if you are someone who is a tarot like tube creator, definitely share your cards. I'm so curious to see what others have to say. If you don't, but you want to tell me, and please do, comment down below. You can tell me what your favorite renditions of any card are. So, yeah. For now, I am out. Bye.